The statement made by President Donald Trump using the phrase American Armada may appear, at first glance, to be a simple rhetorical flourish. However, in international politics and military strategy, word choice is never accidental, especially when it comes from the President of the United States. Every term carries historical weight, strategic meaning, and psychological impact. The moment Trump used the word Armada in reference to U.S. movement toward Iran, it immediately shifted the tone of the situation from routine military maneuvering to something far more serious. This is why global media outlets, military analysts, and diplomatic circles reacted so quickly. The word itself triggered memories of past confrontations, raised questions about intent, and increased anxiety about possible escalation in an already volatile region. To understand why this single word created such global attention, it is important to understand what Armada actually means in military and historical terms. An armada is not a casual or flexible term used for everyday naval deployments. It traditionally refers to an exceptionally large, highly coordinated, and overwhelmingly powerful naval force. Historically, the term is associated with decisive moments in warfare, such as the Spanish Armada of the 16th century, which symbolized not just military strength, but imperial ambition and strategic dominance. In modern military language, an armada implies the concentration of maximum naval power, often involving aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, missile-equipped destroyers, surveillance systems, logistics ships, and integrated air defense networks operating as a single force. When such a term is used, it implies readiness for large-scale operations rather than limited or defensive missions. An armada suggests that the force is capable of sustained combat, regional dominance, and rapid escalation if needed. Therefore, Trump's choice of words conveyed much more than movement or presence. It communicated capability, intent, and willingness to use force if circumstances demanded it. This is why analysts did not treat the statement as symbolic language alone, but as a strategic signal sent deliberately to multiple audiences at once. One of the key audiences for this message was Iran. The United States and Iran have a long history of hostility, mistrust, and indirect confrontation. From economic sanctions and cyber warfare to proxy conflicts across the Middle East, both countries have engaged in a sustained struggle without crossing into full-scale war. In this context, the mention of an American armada signals that the United States is prepared to raise the stakes significantly. It suggests that Washington wants Tehran to understand that it has the capacity to project overwhelming force into the region at short notice, and that this force is not theoretical but already mobilizing. At the same time, the message was also directed at U.S. allies and partners in the Middle East. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Israel, and others closely monitor U.S. military posture in the region because it directly affects their security calculations. By publicly using such strong language, Trump reassured these allies that the United States remains committed to maintaining dominance in regional security and deterring Iranian influence. In that sense, the statement was not only confrontational toward Iran, but also reassuring toward allies who rely on American military backing. Another critical audience was the domestic American public. Trump was known for using strong, dramatic language to project strength and decisiveness to his supporters. By invoking the image of an armada, he reinforced his political image as a leader who does not hesitate to use American power when national interests are at stake. This kind of language plays well with certain segments of the electorate that equate military strength with national greatness. Therefore, the statement served a domestic political function alongside its international implications. The concept of gunboat diplomacy, which the original text references, is essential to understanding the deeper meaning of this statement. Gunboat diplomacy refers to the use of military power, or the threat of it, to influence the behavior of other states without necessarily engaging in direct conflict. It is about coercion through presence rather than immediate violence. By sending powerful naval forces close to an adversary's territory, a state communicates that it has the means to act and that restraint should not be mistaken for weakness. Trump's use of the term Armada fits squarely within this tradition, signaling pressure rather than immediate attack. This approach has been used repeatedly throughout modern history, particularly by naval powers. The United States, with its global navy, has often relied on such strategies to maintain influence, deter adversaries, and shape negotiations. Aircraft carrier strike groups, for example, are frequently deployed to regions experiencing instability precisely because they represent flexible yet formidable power. Trump's language simply made explicit what is often implied in such deployments. The historical comparison to 2017 and North Korea is particularly relevant because it demonstrates a pattern in Trump's communication style. During the height of tensions with Pyongyang, Trump used similarly dramatic language that suggested imminent conflict. Media headlines at the time spoke openly of the possibility of war, and global markets reacted nervously. However, no direct military confrontation occurred. Instead, the pressure eventually gave way to diplomatic engagement, including high-profile summits. This historical precedent suggests that Trump's language often aims to maximize psychological pressure rather than signal immediate military action. However, this does not mean such language is harmless. Words at this level of power carry real risks. When leaders use highly charged military terminology, they can unintentionally narrow diplomatic options. Adversaries may feel compelled to respond aggressively in order to avoid appearing weak, especially in domestic political contexts. This is particularly true for Iran, where national pride, revolutionary ideology, and resistance to U.S. pressure are deeply ingrained in the political system. Iran's immediate response to Trump's statement reflects this reality. By declaring that any American attack would be treated as an all-out war, Iranian officials sought to send a clear deterrent message of their own. This response was not necessarily an indication of desire for war, but rather an attempt to raise the perceived cost of U.S. military action. In strategic terms, Iran was signaling that escalation would not be limited or controllable, thereby attempting to discourage American decision-makers from taking further steps. The danger in this exchange lies in miscalculation. When both sides use strong language and emphasize readiness for conflict, the margin for error becomes dangerously small. The Persian Gulf is one of the most militarized and sensitive regions in the world. It is narrow, crowded with naval vessels from multiple countries, and vital to global energy flows. Even a minor incident, such as a naval collision, misidentified aircraft, or misinterpreted maneuver, could escalate rapidly under such tense conditions. Furthermore, the global implications of conflict in this region cannot be overstated. A significant portion of the world's oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption could lead to sharp increases in energy prices, economic instability, and political fallout far beyond the Middle East. This is why global powers such as China, Russia, and European states closely monitor U.S.-Iran tensions and often urge restraint, regardless of their political alignment. Trump's use of the word Armada must therefore be understood as part of a broader strategic communication effort rather than a standalone statement. It was designed to project strength, create uncertainty in the mind of the adversary, reassure allies, and shape domestic perceptions, all at the same time. This multi-layered messaging is characteristic of high-level geopolitical signaling, where words are often as important as physical actions. At the same time, it is important to recognize that signaling strength does not automatically lead to war. In many cases, such displays are intended precisely to avoid conflict by convincing the opposing side that escalation would be too costly. The paradox of deterrence is that peace is sometimes maintained through the visible preparation for war. Trump's statement fits within this paradox, balancing on the line between intimidation and restraint. In conclusion, the use of the word Armada by President Trump was not accidental, emotional, or careless. It was a deliberate choice loaded with historical, military, and political meaning. While it does not necessarily indicate that war is imminent, it clearly signals a willingness to escalate pressure and a readiness to use force if required. It also highlights how fragile the current state of U.S.-Iran relations is and how quickly rhetoric alone can raise global tensions. In an era where perception often shapes reality, such language has the power to influence decisions, markets, alliances, and ultimately the course of history itself.